Welcome to Bored to Sleep, the channel where history gets weird, uncomfortable, and just boring enough to knock you out. We take you inside the mud, blood, and bad decisions of the past with a mix of sarcasm, dark humor, and way too honest details. Subscribe for gloriously awkward history you definitely didn't learn in school. You wake up face down in mud, and not the, "oh, I tripped in a puddle" kind. This is swamp mud, warm, sticky, and smelling like a mix of rotten eggs, sweaty gym socks, and that one garbage bin behind Taco Bell in July. You try to move and realize your shirt, wool naturally, is plastered to your back like some medieval torture device designed to soak up maximum sweat. You roll over, squint against the blinding Florida sun, and immediately regret it. The heat slams into you like opening the door to a preheated oven. You blink a few times, hoping maybe you've woken up in a bad dream, but nope. All you see are endless mangroves, brown water shimmering under a cloudless sky, and more mosquitoes than you thought could exist in one place. They're not just buzzing, they're committing war crimes against your skin. Someone's yelling in the distance. A deep, gravelly voice barking orders. You recognize it immediately. It's Sergeant Doesn't Believe in Joy Thompson. He's telling everyone to get moving because apparently the swamps won't fight themselves. You groan, but you don't get up fast enough. A shadow falls over you, and there he is, glaring down like you just personally offended George Washington. "On your feet, Private!" "The Seminoles aren't going to wait for you to finish your nap." You stand, mostly because you've learned the hard way that not listening means extra duties, which in swamp world means digging latrines. Your boots squish with every step, and you realize they're half full of water already. You can't remember the last time they were dry. Probably sometime before you got here, whenever here became your personal hell. The year is 1836. The United States is expanding, and Florida is the prize in this round of manifest destiny, which is basically America's 19th century way of saying, we retaking it because we can. The only problem? The Seminole people have absolutely no interest in leaving, and they're better at living and fighting in this swamp than you'll ever be. The camp you are in looks less like an army base and more like a disaster relief center after a hurricane. There are tents that can barely stand upright. The ground is a patchwork of mud and trampled grass. And the kitchen is just a smoky fire pit where a guy named Harlan boils whatever he caught that morning. Sometimes it's fish, sometimes it's squirrel. Once, you're pretty sure it was iguana. You pass a group of soldiers hunched over, scraping mud off their muskets. One of them, Jenkins, grins at you with 3 missing teeth and says, "Heard you fell asleep in the mud again. At this rate, you'll turn into part of the swamp." You laugh weakly because, well, he's not wrong. Everywhere you look, there's movement. Men hauling supplies, others repairing gear, a few unlucky souls assigned to chop through dense brush just to make a path. The smell is a cocktail of sweat, wet wool, and the faint tang of gunpowder. It's not pleasant, but your nose has kind of given up complaining. You grab your gear, musket, powder, a handful of cartridges, and fall in line. The sergeant leads you out into the swamp, your feet sinking deeper with each step. Water seeps over your boots, and you try not to think about the fact that something alive just brushed past your ankle. Could have been a fish. Could have been a snake. Could have been... Yeah, you don't want to think about it. Branches scrape your face, insects dive bomb your ears, and the sun presses down on you like it's trying to melt your skull. You re-sweating so much, you not sure if you will ever be dry again. Somewhere in the distance, you hear the faint pop of musket fire. Everyone freezes. The sergeant raises a hand, and you can see his jaw tighten. The Seminoles are out there. Watching, waiting. The tension is like a held breath. Your eyes scan the tree line, but all you see is green. Layers and layers of tangled plants that could hide an army. The only sound is the slow drip of water from the leaves above. Then, just as quickly as it started, the moment passes. The sergeant waves you forward, muttering something about false alarms. You're not convinced. Hours pass. You lose track of time because the swamp doesn't change. Just water, plants, and bugs in every direction. Your shoulders ache from carrying your musket. Your legs feel like lead from trudging through the muck. Every so often you catch a glimpse of movement in the trees, and your heart jumps, but it's usually just a bird or maybe your own reflection in the water. By the time you stumble back into camp, the sun is setting. The sky burns orange and red, and the air cools just enough to remind you what relief feels like. Dinner is a mystery stew that tastes faintly of salt and regret, but you eat every bite because you don't know when you'll get more. You sit by the fire listening to the crackle of the flames and the distant croak of frogs. Around you, soldiers swap stories, some funny, some terrifying, some probably made up on the spot. You laugh even though you're too tired to care if the jokes are good. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the firelight, the swamp stirs. You can hear it. The faint splash of something moving in the water. The whisper of leaves shifting. You try to ignore it. You focus on the warmth of the fire, the sound of familiar voices, and the fact that, for tonight at least, you've survived. And as you lie down on your bedroll, feeling the damp ground beneath you, you can't help but wonder how many more mornings you'll wake up face down in this mud, and how many more times you'll wish you hadn't. You wake up before sunrise, not because you want to, but because something wet just dripped on your face. You blink in the darkness and feel it again, cold, slimy, and probably not just water. You swat at it, thinking it's a mosquito, but your fingers meet something squishy, a tree frog. Congratulations, you're now fully awake and your day hasn't even started. The air is thick enough to drink, heavy with the smell of damp earth, sweat, and wood smoke from last night's dying campfire. You roll over, stretch, and immediately regret it as your shoulder aches from hauling a musket yesterday. Your uniform, wool, because apparently nobody in charge has ever been to Florida, is still damp from the swamp. Your socks are wet, your boots are wet, even your underwear is wet. You've stopped asking why at this point. The first sound of the day is the sergeant yelling. He doesn't need a bugle. His voice could wake the dead. On your feet! Move it! Let's go! You groan, shove your gear into a rough pile, and start your morning ritual. Though ritual makes it sound far more pleasant than it is. You check your musket, not because you expect it to be clean, but because if you don't, it'll misfire at the worst possible time. You run a cloth through the barrel, swat away mosquitoes, and take a swig from your canteen. The water tastes faintly of metal and something you can't quite identify. You drink it anyway. Breakfast is, well, technically food, a chunk of hardtack, which is basically a brick made of flour, water, and pure spite. You soak it in whatever liquid you can find to soften it, but it still has the texture of drywall. Then there's the salted pork, so hard you could use it as a weapon. You bite down carefully, praying you don't break a tooth. A few lucky souls manage to snag coffee from a pot boiling over the fire, but it tastes like burnt mud. Nobody complains. After breakfast, the real work begins. Today's orders? Patrol the swamp for signs of Seminole fighters. That means hours of wading through water that comes up to your knees, or higher, while carrying everything you need to kill someone and keep yourself alive. The sun isn't even fully up, but the humidity is already punching you in the lungs. Your shirt sticks to your skin, your hat feels like it's trapping all the heat in your skull, and every step pulls at your legs like the swamp itself is trying to keep you. And then there's the bugs. Mosquitoes the size of nickels swarm your face and arms, biting through your clothes like they're not even there. Deer flies land on your neck, biting hard enough to make you swear. You slap one away and your hand comes back with blood. Yours, not the flies. In the distance, you hear the faint hum of cicadas, which is weirdly soothing until you remember they're probably crawling somewhere nearby. Sometimes the sergeant has you chopping through tangled vines and branches with a machete. Each swing sends a spray of leaves and bugs into the air. You learn to keep your mouth closed unless you want an extra serving of protein. Other times you're hauling supplies, barrels of water, crates of ammunition, through terrain that hates you. Your boots squelch, your back aches, and you start to wonder if there's a medal for most miserable. And if you're not patrolling or hauling, you're digging, trenches for drainage, holes for latrines, fire pits for cooking. The ground alternates between soggy mud and stubborn roots, so you either fight with the shovel or sink up to your ankles in the mess. The smell of the latrines alone could take down a full-grown man, but somehow you get used to it. Lunch is whatever's left from breakfast, plus maybe a strip of jerked beef if you're lucky. You eat sitting on a log, swatting flies and listening to the guy next to you talk about home. Most of the men joined for the pay, $8 a month, or because they were told it would be an adventure. You're starting to think adventure was military code for guaranteed suffering. Afternoons are worse than mornings. The sun turns the swamp into a steam bath and every step feels heavier. Sometimes you see a snake slide past in the water and you just let it go. If it's not biting you, it's not your problem. You keep your eyes on the water, though, because sometimes logs move, and those logs have teeth. Back at camp, you get assigned cleaning duty, which sounds nice until you realize it means scraping black powder residue out of your musket while sweat drips down your face. Your hands are cramped, your shoulders sore, and you keep glancing at the tree line, half expecting to see someone watching you. The thought never quite leaves your mind, because out here, someone usually is. As the day winds down, you start thinking about dinner. That's dangerous, because the more you think about it, the more disappointed you'll be. Tonight, stew smells like someone boiled swamp water with meat that was already halfway to being spoiled. But you eat it anyway, because hunger doesn't care about taste. The firelight flickers over tired faces, some men joking, others staring into the flames like they're trying to remember why they're here. You end the day the same way you started, covered in sweat, dirt, and bug bites. You strip off your boots, peel away your socks, and inspect you start the day already bracing yourself for the people you are going to have to deal with. In the swamp, there's no escaping anyone. Every personality, every quirk, every bad habit is magnified because you're all living in each other's laps, covered in the same grime, swatting at the same mosquitoes. There's no clocking out when someone's getting on your nerves. You just grit your teeth, smile, and fantasize about quietly pushing them into the nearest gator-infested pool. First, there are the officers. They're easy to spot. Uniforms somehow cleaner than yours, boots still polished, and they've perfected the art of standing with their arms behind their backs like they reposing for a portrait. They talk about strategic movement and efficient deployment, which is rich considering their strategic movement usually means sending you and your squad to slog through waist-deep water while they remain on a dry ridge, sipping coffee. Lieutenant Briggs is the worst, always shouting orders like he's leading a grand charge at Gettysburg, except here the biggest danger in the moment is tripping over a tree root. You've tried to like him, but every conversation with Briggs feels like he is auditioning for a history book no one will ever read. Then there's the rest of the enlisted men, the lifeblood of the camp, and also the reason you sometimes wish you'd just stayed home. Private Jenkins, for example, is a compulsive liar in the most entertaining way. He claims he once fought off a bear with nothing but a stick, but you've seen him scream at the sight of a raccoon. His stories are so wildly untrue that you almost want to believe them, if only to make this miserable existence a little more interesting. Corporal Davis is another fixture. He's big, gruff, and swears every animal in the swamp is out to get him personally. Last week, he announced he'd been bitten by an alligator the size of a wagon. You didn't see a mark on him, but he's telling the story so often that now half the camp believes it. There's also Miller, the guy who knows every piece of gossip before it happens. He's the camp's unofficial news network, passing along information about supply shipments, patrol routes, and who got caught sneaking extra rations. Sometimes you think he's making it up, but every now and then, he's dead on, which makes him dangerous to ignore. Of course, the most interesting and nerve-wracking people you deal with aren't in your camp at all. The Seminole warriors move like shadows, appearing and disappearing in the thick green walls of the swamp. You rarely see them up close, but you feel their presence. The older soldiers whisper about their skill, how they can fire a musket and vanish before you know where the shot came from, how they can move through the water without making a sound. It's unsettling, especially when you're on patrol and you swear you see a flicker of movement out of the corner of your eye. You blink, and it's gone. There's an unspoken rule in camp that you don't underestimate them. Even the cockiest loudmouths lower their voices when talking about the Seminoles. They know the land in a way you can't even begin to understand. Out here, that's worth more than any number of soldiers in uniform. The traders and camp followers add another layer of color to your days. A few civilians hang around the edges of the camp, selling tobacco, coffee, or odds and ends they've scavenged. They're opportunists, but in a place where luxuries are scarce, they might as well be royalty. One woman, everyone calls her Miss Ellie, shows up with baskets of bread that smell like heaven compared to the glue-textured hardtack you are used to. She charges too much, but no one complains. Then there are the ones who just make life harder. Some men can't keep their tempers in check. Arguments break out over stolen rations, dirty jokes, or someone snoring too loud. Once, a fight started because a soldier accused another of hiding his socks. The irony was that neither pair was clean, and both smelled like they'd been fermenting in a barrel. Imagined conversations play in your head throughout the day, little dramas you can't help but indulge in. You picture telling Lieutenant Briggs exactly what you think about his tactical genius. You imagine calling Jenkins out on his bear story. You even dream about asking one of the Seminoles what they think of you trudging through their home like some lost farm animal. In your head, it's all very satisfying. In reality, you just keep your mouth shut. Survival isn't a T just about staying alive physically. It is S about knowing when to keep your head down socially. Evenings are the social highlight, if you can call them that. After the patrols return and the sun drops low, men gather around the fire in loose circles. The stories start flowing, some real, most wildly exaggerated. Jenkins always gets the loudest laughs, but Miller's updates on the wider war keep everyone's attention. The camp is a strange place at night, quieter, but also more dangerous. You can see the fatigue in everyone's faces, the little cracks in their bravado. It's in those moments you realize you're all the same, tired, itchy, and praying tomorrow isn't worse than today. The mix of people here is a constant reminder that war isn't a T fought by heroes out of storybooks. It's fought by farmers who traded plows for muskets, city boys who thought this would be an adventure, and career soldiers who've seen too much to care about glory. Some are here for the pay, some for a sense of duty, and some because they were given no choice at all. As you lie in your tent that night, you can hear Briggs snoring from his tent, loud and obnoxious, like a saw trying to cut through a stubborn log. Jenkins is whispering another tall tale to whoever will listen. Somewhere out in the swamp, you think you hear a faint splash. You freeze, wondering if someone's out there, watching. And that ass, when it hits you, the people you deal with every day are just as much a part of the danger as the unseen enemy. Out here, you're surrounded by allies, rivals, strangers, and shadows. And somehow, you've got to survive all of them. When the sun slips below the trees, the swamp changes. The thick, sticky heat doesn't go away. It just shifts into something heavier, more oppressive, like the whole place is holding its breath. The colors fade into shades of black and silver, and the shadows stretch long and sharp. The noises start almost immediately, frogs croaking in uneven rhythms, insects buzzing with a high-pitched whine, something big moving through the water just far enough away that you can tell if it is harmless or planning to eat you. The firelight in camp feels fragile, a thin bubble against the darkness pressing in from all sides. You sit close to it, not for warmth, but for the illusion of safety. Your musket is within arm's reach, powder dry, because everyone knows the Seminoles prefer to strike at night. You've heard the stories. fighters appearing out of the tree line without warning, muskets firing from the dark, then silence so complete it makes your skin crawl. Every sound becomes suspicious. A branch snaps somewhere in the distance, too sharp to be an animal? You glance toward the sound, heart beating faster. The man next to you is already peering into the dark, his knuckles white on his weapon. The air smells of smoke and wet earth, layered with the faint tang of gunpowder left over from cleaning weapons earlier. You try to distract yourself by focusing on the small details, the crackle of the fire, the way the light catches the edge of your tin cup, the low murmur of voices nearby. But your ears keep tuning back to the swamp. A faint splash, a rustle in the brush, then nothing. That nothing is worse than the noise. It's like the darkness itself is leaning closer, listening. When sleep finally comes, it's light and uneasy. Every dream blurs with reality. Your tent flap moving in the wind feels like someone lifting it. A gust rattling the leaves sounds like footsteps. Once you swear you hear breathing just outside, steady and slow. You grip your musket, listening so hard it hurts, but there's only the night and your own pulse pounding in your ears. Morning will bring its own misery. But for now, the danger after dark is all you can think about. Out here, night isn't a pause in the war. It is just another battlefield you can see. By the time the first light filters through the swamp canopy, you're already awake. Not because you slept well, but because you didn't. The night was a blur of half-dreams and waking jolts, every sound a possible threat. Now the air feels heavy in that way it does before the day really starts, thick with damp and still carrying the ghost of last night's fire. You sit up slowly, muscles sore. Mind replaying the same question you've had since you arrived. What is the point of all this? Out here, it's easy to get lost in the routine. Wake up, eat something vaguely edible, march through muck, try not to get killed, repeat. But when you think about it, the real why, the answers are ugly. The war isn't some grand crusade for justice. It's about land, power, and a government that decided the Seminole people had to go, no matter the cost. Every foot of this swamp is a piece of someone's home being fought over like it, as just another square on a map. You've heard the speeches about progress and destiny, but those words don't match what you see. Progress looks like exhausted men collapsing by a fire after 12 hours of marching. Destiny looks like a burned village on the edge of the swamp, its ashes still warm. You can't tell if anyone's winning. It just feels like everyone's losing at different speeds. Some of the older soldiers talk about how this war will be remembered. They imagine stories in history books about bravery and sacrifice. You're not so sure. You've seen too many things that don't fit into a neat, patriotic narrative. The raids where civilians are caught in the crossfire. The days where nothing happens except sickness spreading through camp. The quiet moments when a man stares into the trees, his eyes gone distant because he's thinking about something, or someone, he left behind. And the Seminoles, you can't stop thinking about them either. You've seen their skill, their persistence. They're outnumbered, outgunned, and still they fight, not for glory, but because this is their land. They know every stream, every ridge, every hidden trail. They can melt into the trees like ghosts, reappear miles away, and hit you before you even know they're there. You can't help but respect that, even if you're supposed to see them as the enemy. It's strange, but sometimes you imagine what this war looks like from their side. You wonder if they tell stories about you the way you tell stories about them. How the soldiers blunder through the swamp making noise. How they can be tracked by the smell of their campfires. How they always seem tired and slow compared to those who belong here. Maybe somewhere in the dark. Someone is laughing about you right now. The truth is, most of the men here didn't come because they wanted to. Some were promised money. Others were given the choice between prison and the army. A few, like the green recruits straight from farms, believed they'd see the country and have an adventure. But no one talks about adventure anymore. That word doesn't survive your first case of swamp fever or your first night raid. It changes you, being out here this long. You start to measure time differently, not in days or months, but in small victories. A pair of socks that stays dry for an entire day. A meal that doesn't taste like something you should bury. A patrol that comes back without losing anyone. You cling to those moments because they're proof that maybe, just maybe, you'll get out of here in one piece. But the war has a way of reminding you that nothing is guaranteed. Men disappear into the swamp and never come back. Sometimes it's an ambush. Sometimes it's an accident. A misstep into deep water. A fall into the wrong patch of mud. A bite from something you didn't even see. Out here, the line between life and death is paper thin. So why does it still matter? Because it will happen again. Different place, different time, same story. People in power deciding someone else's home is in the way. Soldiers sent to do the dirty work. Civilians caught in the middle. History has a nasty habit of repeating itself, especially the parts no one likes to talk about. When you think about the forgotten part of America's forgotten wars, it's not just that people done to remember them, it is that some never knew in the first place. This war doesn't have the clean hero-villain divide that makes for a good schoolbook chapter. It doesn't end with a parade. It ends with disease, with exhaustion, with survivors wondering what it was all for. And maybe that's why it gets left out. But forgetting it doesn't erase it. The swamp will remember. The land will remember. The people who fought here, on both sides, will carry it until they're gone. And even if no one else ever says the names, the ghosts will. You sit there, staring out at the mist rising from the water, and you realize something. Survival here isn't just about keeping your heart beating. It's about holding on to the truth, even when it's inconvenient. Even when it doesn't fit the story people want to tell. Because if the hard parts get erased, all that's left is a lie. A bird calls somewhere in the trees, sharp and sudden. It pulls you back into the moment. You stand, sling your musket over your shoulder, and prepare to go where you're told. It's just another day in the swamp, another march, another reminder that you are a small part of something that will probably never get the recognition, or the reckoning, it deserves. So maybe that's the question you should be asking. Not whether you'll make it out alive, but whether the story will. And when you think about it like that, the real danger isn't just the enemy in the dark, it's being forgotten. So, would you make it out alive? Or would you just fade into the background of history, another nameless shadow swallowed by the swamp?